Peace, peace. This is Brother Lee. This is Brother Faheem. And you are now tuning into the Lead with Logic podcast. You know the vibes. Welcome back to another nice episode of Lead with Logic, man. And I'm your gracious and most humble host, Brother Lee. Hey, listen, man, life always moves at such an ultramagnetic pace. I try to keep my boots laced so that I can win the race. Man, they say it's a blue Monday. I guess everywhere else it is. For me, it's a red. It's always a red, black, and green Monday. Yeah, man. A lot going on. So much drama, so much trouble in the world. So many things going on at any given time. And I just try to stay locked in, try to stay tuned in, try to keep my nose to the grind, ear to the grind, really, so that I can bring the people some nice quality information that they can utilize to better themselves, to live life in 3D and enhance their enlightenment. This is the third and final bill that I'll do on the holy trinity of capitalism, right? And I dealt with, if you go back a few bills, I dealt with three things. Well, I dealt with two things. I dealt with the food industry, right? And how that's affecting us. And then I also dealt with the medical industry, right? Healthcare, what that means and how that intertwine. When you watch the bills, you'll see the streamlines, you'll see the similarities, and you'll see the places where they overlap, right? I don't know if you guys have ever seen the diagram of the three circles, right? It's like one circle at the top, one on the side, and then one on the other side. And then it's that bio nuclear looking symbol that it makes when they all three in the center, right? Um, this is the last of the circles. This is the third of the circles, right? In that bubble or in that little symbol, and that's the pharmaceutical industry. When you look, I couldn't think of another three other industries that aren't as imminent and prominent in my life, in our lives, right? Everybody has to eat, right? Everybody has to go to the doctor. And unfortunately, everybody has to take medicines. We all take medicines of some sort or some type. If we're not, man, we're in a very good condition. We're in a very good shape. I would say, uh, for those of you all who don't want to get to the end of your life or the golden years, right, of your life and have to take these meds, man, it's imperative and it's incumbent upon us that we pay attention to these industries because you know when one thinks business, there's no real allegiance, there's no real loyalty to customers. I mean, they say the customer's always right in a sense that you don't want to argue with customers. You don't want to cause friction because these are the people who affect your dollar, your bottom line. And oftentimes, they are those people who distinguish the color, right? What I mean is they can keep you in the red or they can take you over into the black. You feel what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, a business's primary goal is to make money, is to be profitable. And when we look at things in that aspect, in that sense, they further make sense. Uh, we begin to now peel back layers, right? So yes, I am going to, for those of you all watching this replay, I'm going to take a pause for the calls and send out this link to all of y'all. Yeah, I'm gonna send this link out. And I hope everybody's Monday wasn't so blue. Yeah, for the people watching this kickback, for y'all watching the replay, man, I'm just trying to get people into the room, so they can join in and get a little bit of this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Get a little bit of this information, because, like I said, I know that the pharmaceutical industry is one of those industries that we all come into contact with, and if we're not coming into contact with them right now, as a younger person, we have a relative, an elder relative, or it might not even be a relative. It might be a younger person who was born with an ailment, right, or a condition, and they have to deal with the pharmaceutical companies. And so, a lot of times when we deal with them, it's like we're at a loss. We're at the mercy of them, because where else are you gonna get it from? Where else are you gonna get your pharmaceuticals from? So yeah, so if y'all will, what's y'all with the bought an AR with my advance? I had to get his hate on around. Welcome, 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 welcome. Listen, listen. If you aren't already, do me a favor, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to the Lead with Logic podcast here on YouTube, so that you can always catch this replay. You can always catch it when it's happening live, and you can catch the knowledge and wisdom and understanding I'm giving out. When you come in, you can also put a comment on. Please, I would ask that you put a comment. Please comment on what you see, good, bad, or indifferent. Comment on what you see. I appreciate it. I would appreciate that. I would definitely appreciate that. Yes. And I'm just sending out a couple of invites. It's much like when you have a room on Twitter or fan base or wherever else that you build on. You wait for people to come in the room so that you can get max participation, and that you can also offer maximum inspiration, right? Yeah, make sure whoever that is, peace, peace. Make sure you go to the comments and announce yourself. If you talk to me, I'll talk back, and I'll talk black. Yeah, so what I am doing is inviting people, trying to get people involved with what we have going on here. I see it's two beautiful souls. If y'all will please go into the comments and say what up. Let me know that you were here. I appreciate it. And also, wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, wherever you at, please copy the link and send it out to somebody who you know enjoys knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Oh, three, that's my favorite number, understanding. Oh, they went back down to two, but it's all good. Three is my favorite number, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So let's see what we got here. All right, nobody just yet. Nobody just yet. Let's invite some more people. I'm gonna start in just a second, y'all. If you watch, hey, if you're watching the playback, just roll forward. But I'm gonna be starting in a minute. What the hell, bro? All right. I think that's enough. I think that is enough. So let's get the party started. Let's get the party started. Okay, man. So, like I was saying, welcome. I'm your gracious host, brother Faheem, brother Lee, whatever you want to call it. What's going on? Peace, God. Peace. I see you, merchaverse. Listen, man, welcome again. Before I get started, man, like and subscribe so that you get all the notifications when Brother Faheem goes live. You can catch me on all my mediums. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, uh, Fanbase, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Plus. Yeah, man, you can catch me on all these mediums. But yeah, like I say, right here and right now, wherever you are, if you're watching my live, I'm streaming through to YouTube. Maybe I'm on Facebook, but going over to Facebook and like and subscribe so that you can get all notifications. And also pick up a little merch too, right? Pick up a little merch. We got t-shirts, we got hoodies, hoodie season. So we have a couple special hoodies coming out, a couple special items that I think you guys might dig. So yeah, catch up there. But yes. The lecture at hand, man. The Holy Trinity, man. You know, this came to me because something that is prominent in our lives, something that's imminent that we have to do. We have to do these three things at some point, right? We all have to eat. We all have to go to the doctor in some way, shape, or form. If it's just getting a checkup, right? And we eventually, and sometimes we're born with conditions that would force us to have to use different pharmaceuticals, right? Different drugs, right? So in this capitalist society, you know, I named it the Holy Trinity for a reason, being intentional. Every word counts, brothers and sisters. In capitalism, it stipulates that there's always an underclass, and it also basically places profits and privatization over the people, over the masses of the people. It affords businesses and corporations this ability to forego uh, the health, the wealth, the well being of the customer, of the masses, all for the bottom line, right? Well, we know this has catastrophic effects on different communities, right? From the community that I'm from, the African American community, it's an old saying: when Wall Street catches a cold, we get pneumonia. In other words, things that would affect other communities at a surface level, they affect us deeply. Now, when you think about the pharmaceutical industry, it really affects us because when you look at the number of our people who are up in age that have diabetes, it is astronomical. We lead the charge. When you look at the number of people who are on hypertension or high blood pressure medicines, is astronomical. When you look at the number of us that are obese, right? And when we go to the doctor, we have to get these medicines. It's this new thing. Ozempic, I think, is what I've heard. Somebody was telling me something about Ozempic. People are now using one drug in order to get the side effect of the drug, right? And that's common because I tell y'all what, I'm gonna tell y'all a secret. Viagra is for the heart, but they use it. We use that blue pill to make our soldiers salute, right? But but nonetheless, seriously, um, you take these drugs and you might use them. They might be intended for one cure to resolve one thing, but they have another collateral or fallout, right? And so this is all up under the umbrella of the pharmaceutical companies, right? This is what we see. This is what we see. But again, these pharmaceutical uh, corporations, the FD, the Food and Drug Administration. It's a reason why they're connected, right? Food and Drug Administration. They're intertwined, right? Because consuming one leads to the consumption of the other. And so that's what really gave me the concept behind the Holy Trinity. I saw those three things being connected, and I really wanted us to look into how they're affecting our community, but also the greater community, really, how they're affecting the nation, right? So I'm gonna start with a little video. Kim Iverson, she's a lady, and she did a little research. It's about 6 minutes long, but it's gonna give a good introduction to the topic at hand, and then we're gonna get into some articles and see what these articles are revealing about the pharmaceutical industry. So let me just get this up, share it with you guys. Now this is the name of it is Kim Iverson. Big Pharma's ties to the FDA should be questioned. And what she's going to do is really lay out the groundwork. She's really going to illustrate it a little bit better than I could. Maybe not better than I could, but a little bit quicker than I could, and hit certain points. You'll see it on the screen. But I really would like you guys to take a listen to this because it's some pretty insightful information. I mean, if you don't go to the pharmacy, then don't worry about it. But
Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, millions of Americans turn to the FDA for assurances that the medications and products they use are safe. Created in the early 20th century, the agency was designed to protect the U.S. consumer from unsafe, ineffective medications, equipment, and contaminated food. The agency has had some real success stories, from blocking a morning sickness drug in the 60s that caused birth defects to regulating the manufacturing of foods and purity of over-the-counter medications. The FDA has many times ensured that high-quality, trustworthy products enter American homes. But an agency that was once fully taxpayer-funded and thus worked only for the American people has now shifted to being largely funded by the very industries it regulates. 45% of the FDA's overall budget now comes from the companies it's reviewing, and 65% of the FDA's budget specifically for human drug regulation comes directly from Big Pharma itself. Now, how can an agency regulate an industry it's being funded by? Now, how can an agency regulation comes directly from Big Pharma?
I wanted to pause right here. If y'all read that today, close to 45. Now, this was in 2021, right? This article, Yukon Today, right? 2021, May 21st, 2021. Today, close to 45% of its budget comes from the user fees that companies pay when they apply for approval of a medical device or drug. Now, I'm going to get into what user fees are because there was a Prescription Drug User Fee Act that happened, right, up under George W. Bush. That's what that user fees is referring to. But you see the percentage? That's crazy. That's what you would call a conflict of interest. Anytime the agency that is supposed to be monitoring the other agencies is paid by the agencies, how thorough and how valid and legit is that going to be? That's what that's saying, y'all.
Pharma itself. Now, how can an agency regulate an industry it's being funded by? That's a pretty basic and fair question. This new way to fund the FDA began in the 90s, and through the years, the FDA's reliance on company money has increased. It all started in the 80s when the HIV crisis was creating fear amongst the masses. People were upset that experimental treatments were taking a while to be approved by the FDA. Typical approval for a drug in that time was in the range of 3 to 8 years. And in response to intense pressure, Congress in the early 90s shifted how the FDA was funded in order to encourage speeding up the process. So instead of the agency being fully taxpayer funded, the new setup would have the drug companies themselves footing part of the bill. Now, this would theoretically allow the FDA to expand and hire more people to speed up the regulatory process. And in exchange for pharma money, the FDA would have to set goal dates for drug reviews that were satisfactory to the drug companies. So let's look at the safety record of the drugs since this change in funding. Now, the FDA doesn't always get it right. Prior to this shift in funding, the FDA withdrew or issued black box warning labels on about 21% of the previously approved drugs. That's not really a great record, but it gets worse after the change in funding. The FDA now withdraws or retroactively slaps warning labels on over 26% of previously approved drugs. This means that over a quarter of all FDA-approved drugs later, sometimes years later, end up either being taken off the market because they find out, oops, they're actually not so safe, or they discover serious side effects that require a large black box warning to be placed on the packaging. And a quarter is being generous. Researchers at the Yale School of Medicine found that nearly a third of approved drugs between 2001 and 2010 ended up having major safety issues years after the medications were made widely available. Now, this funding shift that lets companies pay the FDA a fee in exchange for speedy reviews isn't the only conflict of interest. The revolving door between the agency and cushy pharma jobs is another area of concern. Researchers found 27% of regulators left the FDA to work in high-paying pharma jobs. This leads us to wonder if the regulators who are looking out for their own careers are going easy on pharma in order to stay in their good graces for later job opportunities. And how they even make contacts to get those jobs is also eyebrow-raising. Questions have been raised regarding the mingling of regulators and company representatives at conferences and lunches held in high-end fancy hotels such as the Four Seasons. One such concerning annual conference is put on by the organization Impact. The stated goal of the organization is to improve the design of clinical trials. Drug manufacturers pay tens of thousands of dollars to send reps to mingle with FDA officials and NIH researchers at their annual conference. And it seems to have paid off. One clinical trial initiative that sprung from these conferences is called Enriched Enrollment, which allows drug companies to weed out subjects who are non-responsive or who have adverse reactions to the drugs from the clinical trials. This speeds up the approval process and ensures the drug will prove more effective in the data. And speaking of the data, because pharmaceutical companies are paying for the clinical trials, there are many questions regarding the impartiality of the results. Not to mention, the barometer is usually a placebo, not existing effective drugs. So a company only has to prove that their new, expensive, not eligible to be generic treatment is better than nothing. And there's the payments from the pharmaceutical companies to the FDA's physician advisors. Before drugs and treatments are approved, a panel of advisors meet to hear the science, ask questions, and vote whether or not to recommend an approval. The advisors must disclose any possible conflicts of interest. Obviously, this is meant to keep the regulators on the side of the people. But here's the problem. It's well known and widespread that panel members will receive future payments and gifts from the companies they are reviewing or from their major competitors. In fact, a study done by Science found that the 107 physician advisors they looked into, 40 of them had received post hoc earnings or research support to the tune of at least $10,000, 26 of which received more than $100,000, and 6 who received more than $1 million. The report concludes, quote, of the more than 24 million in personal payments or research support from the industry to the 16 top earning advisors who received more than $300,000 each, 93% came from the makers of drugs those advisors previously reviewed or from competitors, unquote.
Wow.
So yeah, maybe these advisors didn't have conflicts of interest before their vote, but knowing the drug companies might make it rain after their vote sure can be persuasive. So in recap, we have a regulatory body that's funded by the very companies they are supposed to be regulating, with about a third of the regulators and advisors either moving on to cushy big pharma careers or receiving lucrative payouts after approving the drugs or halting the drugs of competitors based on data from expensive clinical trials funded by the pharmaceutical companies that test their treatments against literally nothing. So it's no wonder that a third of all approved treatments are later found to have harmful, unknown side effects. This is once again a government body like Congress that is supposed to be beneficial to the American people that has instead been corrupted by big money. And the solution towards taking steps to correcting it begins with eliminating those avenues that allow these multi-billionaires the ability to have so much influence. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you,
Yeah, I think she did a great job of really setting the foundation for what I'm gonna be talking about. Um, couple of things that she said though. She said that were alarming to me when I first watched this. She said regulatory bodies that are regulated by the very corporations that they're supposed to be monitored. That's crazy. That is crazy. That is nuts, y'all. And then people who are within that body going on to work for these bodies and get cushion jobs. They're setting up uh meets, they're setting up seminars where people can interact and mingle and kind of politic, right? They can talk and ensure that their chemical or their pharmaceutical gets approval. Isn't that nuts, y'all? Isn't that crazy? Now, that's how it looks. It's pretty ridiculous, but that's how it looks at the top end. And whenever things like this happen, you always say, man, there are conspiracy theories. These are people who are against the government. Our government wouldn't do that. Au contraire, mon frere. Yes, they would. Yes, they would. It takes me back to the novel coronavirus, right? And I can remember during that period, that's crazy, y'all. It's almost been 5 years, but uh, during that period, I can remember all the backlash and all the chatter and all the debates. There were a lot of fractured friendships. There were a lot of bruised familiar bonds just behind the COVID vaccine and should you get or should you not get. Now, being a part of the Black community, we didn't have the business, we didn't have adequate Black enterprise to really refuse it in high number. What I'm saying is a lot of us had to take it because our job simply stipulated. And if we wanted to continue to care for our families, we had to do what we had to do. And I wasn't mad. I wasn't mad at people at all. If you got it, that was great. If you didn't get it, more power to you. Um, but my point being, I just remember the talk and how people were like, oh man, some of the arguments were so delusional and so illogical. And the one that always stuck out to me was, man, the government wouldn't do us like this. The government has our best interest at heart. You take the flu vaccine, you take chicken pox. Sure, we take all of these. And listen, my mother doesn't take any of that. She's like, I'm not taking nothing because I remember the Tuskegee experiment. I remember how they gave those brothers syphilis just to watch their limbs fall off, just to document the effects of syphilis in the human body. I mean, even further back than that, there's a book. I can't think of the name of it. I know there's a book, Medical Apartheid, that I mentioned in my last bill about the Holy Trinity of capitalism, healthcare, but it talks about how slave bodies were used and how they performed all these intricate and invasive surgeries without, anesthesia, and how it was excruciating pain for people. You have Henrietta Lacks, right, whose cells uh, cure cancer, right? And her family knew nothing about it. I want to say, don't quote me, I want to say that there was a big lawsuit once they found out what they did with the sister cells. But again, my point is these were all governmental initiatives, just like Miss Iverson just explained. This is a government body that is being regulated by the very corporations that, by the way, hold a lot of the health and well-being of its citizens in its grasp, in its gauge. And here it is, they're taking bribes, they're taking money. This is crazy. These are things, right, that we should be looking at. These are abstract concepts. These are abstract meaning you have to dig for them. You have to research, brothers and sisters. You have to look, right? And look into these things in a very intelligent, in a very analytical, in a critical way, because plainly put, our health depends upon it, right? Our health is very dependent upon it. So yeah, I wanted you guys to see that, because I thought it was very interesting when I read that, or when I saw that rather. I was like, wow, these companies are really um they're taking bribes. They're taking bribes. That's crazy. That is super crazy. I'm gonna read this chat real quick. The merch universe. That's the God. Peace to the God merch, man. You know I got love for you, brother. He said, "Damn devils." Yeah, absolutely. Ice cold. What's going on? That's my brother. That's my big brother in Chicago, man. Hey, I love you, boy. Um, a lot of coercion. Facts. It's a whole lot of coercion, man. It's a whole lot of coercion. But one thing I mentioned that I was going to get into was the Prescription Drug User Act. I wanted you to read. I'm going to show you guys that everything that I'm showing you guys, you can look it up yourself. This is nothing that uh, you can't find, online. It's all there. We are the most. This is the age of information, but we're the most ignorant. We're the most ill-informed, and that's crazy. I remember I used to ask my mom a question, and she'd be like, "Look it up." And it was a struggle to look it up because I had to go inside the encyclopedia, big thick book, and it was it was a big thick book like that, and I would look inside of it, man, only to get upset and be like, man, this is crazy. But now these kids, now these kids, man, they have everything at their fingertips. These people have everything at their fingertips, and yet they still can't figure it out. And I say to myself, wow, wow, that is crazy. That is crazy. The World Book. Yep, that was another book, Ice, that you had to look. Yeah, that was another book. So I'm gonna go here and show you guys a little something, right? I'll make this bigger. So this is kind of going to go into what the Prescription Drug User Fee Act calls for concern, right? And this is just a little synopsis of what it is. So the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, the PDUFA, was originally enacted into law in 1992. The PDUFA provides the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, with needed revenue in the form of various fees paid by drug and biologic manufacturers. The FDA utilizes this revenue to streamline the review and approval process for medication. So they use this in order to say, okay, this is gonna work, this is gonna work, right? And they can now take money for it. But this is what the foundation is. This is how they gauge. And companies know this, right? Companies know, hey, now it's money's involved, right? The FDA utilizes this revenue to streamline the review and approval process for medication. Since the enactment of PDUFA, the median approval time for priority new drug applications and biological license applications has reduced significantly. That means it's less time that they're doing thorough research on these drugs. Now, since there's money involved, now they're getting those drugs approved immediately, right? They're coming off the market like that. But how effective are they? Is it given adequate time? Right? We just saw Fauci. They had trials where he said they didn't know what they were doing. He came back and said they made a mistake, y'all. They made a mistake with the novel coronavirus, with all of these vaccines, because they had no time. They couldn't vet it. You need time to vet these vaccines. These drugs, these pharmaceuticals need time. But if we can get money, if money's involved, it's like, hey, let's take off. I'm gonna wet your palm. Go ahead on. This is what this is saying, right? The FDA views PDUFA as a successful program that provides a consistent revenue stream to the agency, improved access to medications for patients, and allows industry to have a more predictable product review timeline. However, critics of PDUFA cite concerns, including the potential for a lack of FDA independence and medication safety issues involving drugs approved after the existence of the PDUFA. That's what I'm saying. They're saying this shit is bogus. Ever since this body has come into existence, we can't do our jobs independently no more. Now we are influenced because you got this money involved, right? And the medication, of course, the medication is going to be a safety issue. If we're looking the other way and taking the bread, who cares about the people? Who cares if that diabetes medicine really doesn't cure or really doesn't offer the insulin potency that it should? Hell, they paid me $3 billion. The people will be okay. They'll be all right. And that's what Miss Iverson was saying. A regulatory body that is regulated by those bodies that is supposed to be monitored and regulated. That's what this is saying, y'all. Just right in the abstract. George Bush signed the initial Prescription Drug User Fee Act into law in 92. Since the initial enactment, it's been reauthorized several times, with most recent authorization occurring in 2017. Under the PDUFA, the Food and Drug Administration collects various fees, application, establishment, and product fees from pharmaceutical and biologic manufacturers. The FDA then uses these funds to hire more necessary staff, upgrade data systems, provide pharmaceutical industry guidance regarding ways to enhance drug development, and improve procedures and standards to make reviews of drugs and biologics more rigorous, consistent, and predictable. So they should be doing something. The intent, right, and the reiteration, it sounds like, is that they should be refining this process, right? They should be honing it so that the drugs that make it out into the pharmaceutical, that make it out onto the shelf, that are dished out by the pharmacist at your local CVS, your local Walgreens, it's a better quality. But that's not what's happening, though, right? Traditionally, the pharmaceutical industry adamantly opposed the adoption of user fees by the FDA. So they were against it. However, the industry's viewpoint shifted when it became apparent that the fees would actually benefit the pharmaceutical industry financially due to a significant reduction in the time to review drug applications, NDAs. These drug applications come from these companies, right? That's what Ms. Iverson was saying. They come from these companies and they have to put it through there, right? They submit the application. That's what we were saying earlier. It used to take a longer time, but now that they get money, right? Now that the PDUFA has been constructed, they get money and it goes through a lot smoother and a lot faster. But it's hurting, though. The FDA review process was extensively prolonged. Therefore, even a reduction of 1 month in the process could significantly reduce the cost of an NDA by more than the user fee. With the enactment of the PDUFA, the FDA significantly improved the median approval time for priority NDAs and biological license applications. The median time was 13.2 months. That's a little over a year in 1993, compared with 6.4 months in 2003. In addition, more than 1,000 new drugs and approximately 100 new biologics were approved since the initial passage of PDUFA, with 50% of these new drugs initially marked in the United States, compared with only 8% in years prior to the PDUFA. This reminds me, it's a movie out there, it's a cult classic. It's one of my favorite. It stars Anthony Mackie, who played Tupac in Notorious. It stars none other than the legendary Q-Tip, who just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with A Tribe Called Quest. Rest in peace to Fife Dog. Um, the beautiful Kerry Washington, and I forget Woody Harrelson, the late great Jim Brown, Loretta McKee. They all star in a movie called She Hate Me, and the movie is about a brother who works at a pharmaceutical company, and his mentor kills himself. He jumps out of a window and he leaves his mentee different pieces of information, different pieces of proof, because he understood the onslaught that was getting ready to happen. And he, by killing himself, he got off easy. He didn't want to face criminal charges that he knew were certain to come down from this company. If you've seen it, it's a wonderful film because he has to go into a form of prostitution to make money. And I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to let you find it out. But my point of mentioning that movie is because, you know, the guy who was the mentor, he left a CD, and on the CD he was documenting, and he had it was chronological. He had it in order how his company, the company that he worked for, was fudging the numbers, how they were rushing, how they were lying to the FDA, and the FDA approved it. And the FDA, and you know, this movie came out around the time that these whistleblowers were real big. It was the Enron. Y'all remember the Enron situation? Uh, all these whistleblowers. It was three women on the Life magazine. And they were like this, three white women, and they were all whistleblowers, and they all were reporting how these agencies, these corporations, were in cahoots or intertwined with government agencies, and they were doing things that were against the public best interest. And so you should check that film out because it's very relevant, and it's very much relative to what I'm talking about right here and right now. So, in summary, the PDUFA remains a cornerstone of the current FDA drug review process, particularly because Congress has shown no interest of increasing debt appropriations to the agencies. The fees generated by PDFU have allowed the FDA to hire more staff, significantly improve review times for drugs and biologics, and enhance access to needed therapies for patients. However, critics of PDFUA wonder whether the FDA can truly be independent when the pharmaceutical industry funds a significant portion of its budget, and point to data implying an association between PDUFA deadlines and an increase in medical safety concern issues. In other words, they're rushing the adequate review time, looking into these drugs that they are putting out on the streets. Uh, they're glossing over it. Uh, and again, they are not looking at the health of the people. They are looking at the profits of these organizations. And so that's one thing. Listen, I wanted to say this. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Brother Faheem, and I am your gracious host of the Leave of Logic podcast. And we're just getting into, man, the Holy Trinity, of the third part of the Holy Trinity in capitalism, which is the pharmaceutical industry. And we're just going over a couple things. Listen, I would ask that if you were listening live, if you were watching this live back, man, go ahead on and hit that like and subscribe button. I would appreciate that. Wherever you are, wherever you're watching this, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, please, please, please jump on in because we're getting into some good information. Now, I want to review some. We just talked about the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, and this is what I gathered that it did. It made a union between the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA. Anytime they have a new drug application, they would pay to have it processed, right? They get it paid. So that's the process, you guys, right? It's paid. So the companies can now pay to get the application processed. Now, when the application gets processed, we understand how red tape works within the government. There's a license. If you want to open an LLC, if you want to open a business, if you want to have a business license, there's a process, right? And sometimes if you want to get a trademark, I just got my trademark for the Leave of Logic. That's mine. Um, but it was a process, and you don't skip the process. In the article, it talked about how before the PD UFA, it was 13.2 months. That's a little over a year for applications to go through because they need time to now do an adequate review of what you're asking, of how your drug is going to now affect the masses or the society at large. But now it's 6.4. They cut the time, the money cut the time in half. That's crazy though, because that's inadequate as far as long-term effects on the people, right? We need that time. We absolutely need it because it's going to affect the rest of a person's life. So they built this union. I read where 70%, he said 45%, but I read 70% of FDA's total budget is drug applications, paying to have their drugs looked at. That's where Miss Iverson was saying a regulatory unit that's regulated by the very bodies that it's supposed to be regulating. And then people who were working in that going out and getting cushy jobs later on with these very same companies. That's crazy. And so one thing, another thing that I found, right, was because we're talking about drugs, pharmaceuticals, and this industry and how it functions. You know, they used to go by original survival, and then they shifted to surrogate endpoints. These were some methods that people have used, right? And I'm gonna get to these methods. Let me get to these methods real quick. I'm gonna explain these methods to you guys because these are what's used. Hey man, y'all can throw something in the chat for me. I think I know who's here. I think it's my man Merch, my brother Merch, my brother Ice, and my brother Askia the Great. Salute to all of y'all. Man, y'all throw me a 7 in the chat if that's you, man. Whoever you are, if y'all out there, throw me a 7. That's the God number. Throw me a 7. Let me know that y'all in the house, man. In the comments, throw me a 7. Yeah, that's the God number. While I get this together so I can show you guys. Just go into a little bit of these clinical. I see you, Ice. Peace to the God. I see Ice. I see you. Okay, there we go. Whoever else that is, man, just throw that 7 up so that I can know who it is out there. All right, let's see. We're gonna put this up. Now this is gonna go into. This is a little bit of. Let me zoom this in. I'm sorry, man. Zoom into this. Yeah, my eyes getting my eyes getting bad. So this is the Friends of Cancer Research, right? That's the website. And these are clinical trial endpoints. But I'm bringing this out because this gives a great definition as to what they do with drugs and pharmaceuticals, the process that they had as opposed to the process that they use and how it kind of differs and how that affects us. A clinical trial endpoint is the primary outcome measured by a clinical trial. For example, the clinical trial for cancer drug might use survival as an endpoint, comparing the 5-year survival rate of patients using experimental therapy against the 5-year survival rate of patients using another treatment. So it's compare and contrast. This case study is using this one, this case study using that one. A clinical trial might use a clinical endpoint or surrogate endpoint. A clinical endpoint is an outcome that represents direct clinical benefit, such as survival, decreased pain, or the absence of disease. The most common and most meaningful clinical endpoint is cancer research, is overall survival. A surrogate endpoint is a substitute for a clinical endpoint where the use of clinical endpoint might not be possible or practical. Overall survival takes many years to read out. Unlike clinical endpoints, surrogate endpoints do not represent direct clinical benefit. So it doesn't have a whole bunch of benefit to it. It has no real shift. It doesn't mark any shift in your treatment, right? But instead predict clinical benefit. For example, tumor shrinkage can be used as a surrogate endpoint for long survival in clinical trials for drugs intended to treat some cancers. Surrogate endpoints are established or validated, meaning they were proven to predict clinical benefit. Other intermediate endpoints may have not been validated but are reasonably likely to predict clinical benefit. FDA can approve drugs using these endpoints through the accelerated approval pathway. So there again, we have the overall survival rate, which has everything to do with those things such as um, decreased pain, the absence of disease, right? Survival. These are more tangible. These are more desirable outcomes. But then when they shift it, when they use the surrogate endpoint, which is what happens, uh, it's for clinical benefit, right? And it does not represent direct clinical benefit. It predicts. So it's most likely to happen if we use this. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? They went from using actual data, right? Actual tangible results to speculation. Now this drug, we believe this will be the outcome, the clinical outcome. We think this is what the clinical benefit will be, even if it's not it, right? So again, uh this is something that's being done, right? These are things, these are those uh clinical things that we are seeing happen, uh that affect our health, that affect the health, and that denote that this pharmaceutical system is moving and operating a little bit differently. But yes, so um yeah, with the FDA, with that fee, I want to show you guys one more thing. Well, a few more things actually. The five largest pharmaceutical lawsuits, right? And when y'all read what they are, you're gonna be like, oh wow, this is crazy. And this was relatively this is close. This is about what, 11 months old, right? Going on 11 months, something like that. Five largest pharmaceutical lawsuits. Let's go like this. Okay, so a company can sell more products if they claim a drug can be used for more purposes than it is approved for. In some cases, these uses are not inherently unsafe; they are just not approved by the FDA. However, there are other situations this is unapproved, where this unapproved usage makes the drug unsafe. This can happen when a drug is being prescribed at a higher dose than recommended, or if it has not been tested in clinical trials. Money plays a big role in why companies will misrepresent drugs. In recent years, many pharmaceutical companies have been questioned and punished for negligent actions. We have provided a list of the five biggest settlement payouts for pharmaceutical lawsuits. Cardinal Health McKesson, AmerisourceBergen, Johnson & Johnson, 2022. Doctors prescribed opioids for numerous ailments that did not require, leading to a major addiction crisis. The settlement came to $26 billion, with $23.9 billion of the settlement funding efforts to stem the opioid crisis. Damn, that's a lot of money. GlaxoSmithKline in 2012. GlaxoSmithKline LLC pled guilty for unlawfully promoting prescription drugs and failing to report safety information. This settlement came out to $3 billion. The money was used as follows: $2 billion for civil liabilities, $43.1 million for forfeiture, and $956.8 million for criminal fines. Damn. Pfizer, 2009. This settlement came out to 2.3 billion as a result of the false promotion of Bextra, Valdexcoxib, yeah, Valdexcoxib tablets, Geodon capsules, Lyrica, Pregabalin, I hope I said that right, and Zyvox. Pfizer faced allegations of paying kickbacks and submitting false claims to the government. The settlement money was used as follows: 1.3 billion for criminal fines and 1 billion for civil settlements for illegal promotions. Johnson & Johnson, 2013. Look at all these lawsuits and listen to what they're claiming, why they were sued and why they had to pay out. This is nuts. Johnson & Johnson pleaded guilty to misbranding this psychotic drug Risperdal. Allegations included off-label marketing and kickbacks to doctors and pharmacists. The settlement reached 2.2 billion to 1.72 billion was used for civil settlements. 419 million was used for criminal fines, and 66 million was used for forfeiture. This is big business. Abbott 2012. In 2012, Abbott pleaded guilty to a criminal misdemeanor for unlawful promotion of the prescription drug uh, Dep- Depakote for uses not approved by the FDA. The settlement came to 1.5 billion and was used for 800 million in civil settlements, 500 million for criminal fines, 198.5 million for forfeiture, and 1.5 million for Virginia Medicaid fraud control unit. That is nuts, y'all. That is nuts. That that all of these that all of these there we go. That all of these lawsuits have happened. And when you look at the reason that they happen, rushing to get them approved, false advertisement as to what they do. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is nuts, y'all. It's all the way nuts. And wow. So, um, you are not. If you've ever had any type of suspicion, if you've ever had any sort of feeling, if you felt some kind of way about anything with those drugs that you're taking, that you're using, Danny Bless Logic, what's going on? I see you. Peace, sister. I appreciate that. Man, if you had any type of apprehension, it's founded. It's not all the way. Uh, it is not all the way. It's not just something that you're being a conspiracy theorist. And listen, y'all, I'm trying to give you guys this information, right? Give you these articles so that you can go back and read yourself, because man, it's a lot coming up. It's a lot coming down the pike. And again, going back to coronavirus and people getting vaccinated, right? Um, it was people's right to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. But again, some people were forced due to whatever their occupation was. But I just remember the arguments against those people who did not want to get them, and those arguments were, man, that's erroneous. The government would never put its people's health at risk. It doesn't function like that. But I'm showing you through this documentation that it absolutely functioned like that, and it's been a lot. It's been happening for a long time. It's been happening for a very long time. Now I pulled up an article, Yale News, new safety concerns identified for 1 in 3 FDA approved drugs. Peace, whoever that is. Man, if y'all will put a 7 in, I see you, Danny. If y'all will put a 7 in the chat, go to the chat, y'all. Go to the comments and put a 7. That's the God number. Put a 7 in the chat. Let me know that you're here. Let me know that you're rocking out with me. I appreciate you. I'll shout you out. And if you got a question, if you got some comments, I'll read them. I will interact with you. And like I say, man, I would appreciate that. But yeah, Yale News. I see you. I see you, Ice. I see the God. I'm gonna put this up there. I'd like for you guys to see it right along with me, yo. This is the Yale. This was that article that Miss Iverson pulled up, and it says new safety concerns identified for 1 in 3 of FDA approved drugs. Nearly 1 out of every 3 drugs approved by the Food and Drug Administration have a new safety issue detected in the years after approval, says a Yale-led study. This was back in 2017. While most of the safety concerns are not serious enough to require withdrawal of a drug from the market, the finding highlights the need for ongoing surveillance of new drugs in the post-market period, said the researchers. The findings were published May 9th in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA. To assess new drugs for safety and effectiveness, the FDA relies on pre-market drug testing and clinical trials. Most of the trials involve fewer than 1,000 patients studied over a period of 6 months or less, making it difficult to detect safety issues that might be identified once more patients use the drug over a longer time period. To identify factors that might enhance patient safety and regulatory surveillance efforts, the Yale-led team analyzed data on new drugs approved between '01 and 2010 with follow-up through 2017. The research team, led by Associate Professor of Medicine and Public Health, Dr. Joseph Ross, found that 32% of new drugs were flagged for safety issues after approval. That is a very that is very rarely a drug withdrawal, but more commonly a black box warning or drug safety communication issued by the FDA to let physicians and patients know that the new safety information has been determined, said Ross. The researchers also identified characteristics of drugs that were more likely to be associated with a safety concern, including biologic therapies and drugs that were approved through the FDA's accelerated approval pathway. And again, remember, we understand that approval pathway is the PDUFA, right? It has allowed these drugs, their application process, to be cut in half. While the study results point to the need for ongoing monitoring of newly approved drugs, they also demonstrate that the FDA's current process is working. The fact that the FDA is issuing safety communications means it is doing a good job of following newly approved drugs and evaluating their safety up in the post-market period, Ross noted. At a time when the FDA is under pressure to accelerate drug approvals, the study findings provide key information about the agency's process. It shows that there's the potential for compromising patient safety when drug evaluation is persistently sped up. There again, we're seeing where, uh, you know, they've been glossing over, man, and that time it's really necessary. They need it. At the very least, the study should inform ongoing debate. About pre-market drug evaluation, the researcher said. Other authors on the study are Nicholas Downing, Nilay Shah, Janarius Amanawang, Allison Pease, John David Harlan Krumholtz. All authors have completed the ICMJE form of disclosure of potential conflicts of interest, which are detailed in the study. So yeah, again, one in three drugs have the propensity or have the capability to be, unhealthy and be harmful. In fact, and be harmful to the wide base of consumers. And that's wild. That is really wild. And again, you guys, I know this is a lot of articles, a lot of journal reading, but it really, 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 uh, it really hits home for me because I look after my mother, and she absolutely takes medicine. And I'm always talking to her about the effect of these medicines on her well-being, on her psyche, on her physical well-being, uh, and on her overall health, right? And so I would hope and think that the people who listen and who tap in and tune in to the Lead with Logic podcast, you guys have a great concern too. If not for the masses of the people, at least for the collective that is your family, right? Um, you should ask questions. I'm thinking about resolve now, and I'm not gonna keep you guys too much longer because I know it's been an hour, but I want to give you guys one more, and then I'm just going to say a few more things. If y'all have questions, please, please, please ask them in the chat. Let me know what they are, and I'll absolutely answer them and let you know as best I can. But now this is Transparency International and Global Health. This is an article in there. Fighting corruption in the pharma sector. Why we all have a role to play. And this goes through a couple of different things. This is the World Health Report, right? It says stuff like reports estimate that as much as 6% of annual global health expenditure is lost to corruption and errors, right? That's globally. That's around the world. While 6% may look like a small figure, it is worth keeping in mind that it represents over US 300 billion, right? That's how many people it represents when you talk about globally. The pharmaceutical sector accounts for a significant portion of health budgets globally. Um, Almost one fifth of the entire healthcare budget across OECD countries is spent on medicines. Despite this, efforts to measure the true scale of the problem and respond effectively are lacking. Now, I wanted to get to this. This is why I came here because it gives a little bit of resolve, right? In order to move forward, the paper identifies the following areas of action. These are things that we can do to help with the pharmaceutical companies, right? This is just one. This is just one perspective on this on the matter. Establishing a leadership committed to addressing corruption, right? All actors must display a genuine commitment to tackling corruption. Those within the pharmaceutical industry committed to pioneering change, and TI, that's the Transnational, unequivocally acknowledge they exist, will play a decisive role. In fact, we are currently developing a set of anti-corruption principles for Latin American pharmaceutical companies in collaboration with FAF, FIFARMA, Latin American Federation of the Pharmaceutical Industry. We will continue to encourage the industry to use its unique position to engage with governments and make the economic argument for corruption's negative effect on business. Crucially, cooperation through multi-stakeholder alliances, bringing together governments, the pharmaceutical industry, global institutions, and civil society organizations is a key element of success. I thought this was important because it talks about, you know, uh, all of these, the multi-stakeholder alliances, right? Bringing together governments, the pharmaceutical industry, global institutions, and civil society organizations. All of these entities have to play a part. Like the title of it is "Why We All Have a Part to Play," right? Adopting technology throughout the pharmaceutical value chain to reduce the opportunity for corruption, to promote transparency and accountability, thereby reducing the incidence of meetings held behind closed doors. Hey, look, and the FDA sent it would help out, if people didn't have these seminars, right? If they didn't have these meetups, these unofficial meetups, where these representatives who work for the FDA, who are supposed to be working for the best interest of the public, aren't working for the best interest of their pockets, right? And so it has to be just like the police have a body cam. Anytime you're serving the public, anytime your what you do and your actions uh, will greatly impact the actions of the masses. Then, just like the police have a body cam, you should also have. Uh, you should also be monitored, right? You should also be monitored if you are dealing with drugs, pharmaceuticals, because you can also cause great bodily harm and injury if you lack integrity and if you lack compassion and commitment to your job. And lastly, ensuring accountability through increased monitoring, enforcement, and sanctions. Governments must implement processes to track activities, publish data, and ensure that all regulations and legislation are properly implemented to ensure that corrupt activities are investigated and punished. Absolutely, 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 man. Uh, we have to continue to monitor. What we can do. Merch, I see Merch 777. What we can do at the local level is do our research. Do your research. How many of you, when you go in the store, you read the back of the ingredients on that food you're getting ready to eat? Do you do that? Do you look at the total carbs? Do you look at the total sugars? Do you look at the ingredients? Do you know what fructose is? Sucrose? Do you know all of these things? Right? Many of us don't. We're so accustomed and we're so used to just buying things. What's going on, Miss Simmons TV? Yes, yes. I'm glad you're here. Peace, peace, Queen. Most of us don't do that, right? But we yet consume these things. So I don't really expect, if we're not looking at what the basic things that we put into our body, how can we expect ourselves to have enough wherewithal to inspect those comprehensive things like medicines, right? That insulin, that brand of medicine. My mom, whenever we go, she's always real adamant about the type of medicine that she gets. And I understand it now. I do. I didn't before, but I do now. She's like, no, I'm not getting the off brand. I need this brand. This is the brand I get. I never ever give her a hard time because sometimes I be like, mine don't matter. It's medicine. And she said, oh boy, it's not. It's not. And she's right. Because now we see, when you guys go back and watch, you'll see how these corporations can now pay, right? They can now use the Prescription Drug User Fee Act to get their drugs, their applications pushed through so that now their drug can hit the market. And it might not be the best. It might not have been tested thoroughly. That's why I showed you all those lawsuits and the nature of those lawsuits. It was things like fraudulent promotion, right? It was things like rushed trials that caused death. These things, right? And so these things are happening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. They are happening every single day. Because again, we live in a system that is capitalistic in nature. And business is always going to take trump to betterment. And when I say betterment, I mean the betterment of those people who are taking these pharmaceuticals, who are taking it, or taking whatever product, really whatever it is, right? But I'm gonna digress and say we should start reading. We should start investigating. We should start dissecting whatever it is you're putting in your body. You should know thoroughly what it is, because I guarantee you it has an effect. And as the numbers show, as the lawsuits show, as the FDA, as all of those articles show, you can go back and watch. Man, it is really harming people, and the government has a history of allowing these corporations money to take precedence over its citizens' well-being. So, it's unfortunate. Again, ending this series, it's unfortunate because everybody in America, everybody in the world, you have to consume food, nutrition, right? You have to eat. You're eventually going to have to go to the hospital, right? And be uh, exposed to the medical industry. And a lot of us are going to, at some point, have engagement and interaction with the pharmaceutical industry. I just want you to be aware that the primary goal, the objective for you is to get well. For them is to make profits. And so you might move differently if you knew that you were all you had, that it was on you to take care of your well-being, right? It's on you. It's really on you, because those thoughts of conspiracy are not really thoughts, they're realities. And if you just do a little bit of research, just do a little bit of work, you'll see uh you'll see and understand what I'm saying. I just want to this is Cat on Soft White Underbelly. He was saying something and I want you guys to hear it. I'm going to end it right here with this. And I appreciate y'all for rocking out, man. I really do. I really appreciate it. I love Soft White Underbelly. He interviews people, just regular people, man, regular folk. And some of these stories are heart-wrenching, heartwarming. Some of them are really sad. Some of them are really dark. Some of them are really funny and really comical. But you will always learn something. I promise you that. You'll always learn something. But this is Mr. Ron Piana. I hope I'm saying his name right. But he worked in the pharmaceutical industry for years. And he was giving a speech. He was talking about what he saw. He was talking about the corruption. And this is what he had to say about the pharmaceutical industry.
The pharma companies, they're there for one thing, to make profit. They have a profit over patient ethos, and that is solid gold, okay? They do anything they can, anything, to get their drugs approved and to get their drugs on the market. Now, it's beyond the scope of this talk, but you can just Google take Amgen, take Genentech, any of these companies, and you'll see lawsuits involved for criminal wrongdoings, okay, of falsely advertising their drugs. So
he it's a real good it is a very, very good, it's an excellent interview that they did with him. If you care to watch it on Soft White Underbelly, it's called Greed and the Pharmaceutical Industry, and he goes into depth and the detail about a few things, a couple of the things that I went over. He gives a little brief overview, excuse me, of these things. And so, yeah, man, the best way, you guys, the best thing to do is eat clean, make sure you fast. It's good to fast as much as possible. It's good to cut down on those processed foods, those refined sugars, because these are the things that are going to lead to your health degenerating and declining. And it will keep you away from the doctor and ultimately the pharmaceutical industry, because once they get you in there, it's much like the legal system for a Black person. Once you get tied up in there, it's hard to get out. It's very hard to get out. It's no different with the medical and the pharmaceutical industry. Once you are intertwined, and once you're intermingled in there, once you get in there, yeah, it's very hard for you to come out of there. So, man, again, I appreciate y'all, man. I really do. I appreciate y'all rocking out. To everybody that came through and watched Cammy Simmons TV, y'all follow Cammy Simmons TV, the Merchiverse. Y'all follow the Merchiverse. My man Turhan Ice, follow him, the God. Miss Danny Marie, y'all follow her. Listen, these people are doing great things. And absolutely follow the Lead with Logic podcast here on YouTube. I'm on Fanbase. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter or X. And you can go over there. It's Lead with Logic. On Fanbase, it's Lead with Logic 7. On Twitter X, it's Soul Ambitions. So yeah, I appreciate y'all, man. And y'all know how it is. Every Monday night, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Next week, I have a awesome interview lined up. Another entrepreneur with a great story, with a great product. Is going to come and bless the stage. Hopefully you guys can tune in so y'all can learn about them, learn where to get their products. And yeah, I really appreciate it. But listen, as Minister Malcolm used to say, may we all meet in the light of understanding, y'all. And may y'all have a most positive, productive, and most of all, peaceful rest of your week. Peace and love, y'all. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.